The other night, a family is driving home from a weekend trip. The kids are half asleep in the back seat. The car rolls through a small town. A patrol car's lights turn on for a broken tail light. Nothing dramatic. And then one tiny choice matters: where the firearm is, how it's stored, and what the driver says next. That's the scary part about U.S. gun laws. Most trouble starts in normal moments. Not in some action movie scene, just daily life with stress and confusion. The Second Amendment is real, but the rules around it can change fast. Stay with me, because the goal here is simple: keep you lawful, calm, and out of avoidable messes. A lot of people grow up with a clean, simple idea in their head. It's America, so I can own a gun, carry a gun, and I'm covered. That belief isn't crazy, but it's incomplete in a way that gets people hurt. Not just physically, but financially and legally, even when they meant well. The Second Amendment is one sentence that carries a huge weight. It says people have a right to keep and bear arms. Keep is having them. Bear is carrying them, at least in some form, but the amendment doesn't map out the details of modern life, and that's where fights begin. Here's the big misunderstanding that fuels most arguments. Many people think the Second Amendment works like a magic shield. They think if they say, "my rights," the rules melt away. In real life, rights don't work like that, and gun laws are built on layers. There's the world people think the law is and the world they meet on the street. In the first world, everything is clear and fair and consistent. In the second world, rules are different by state, by city, and sometimes by building. And the second world is the one you actually live in when you step outside. In the what people think world, a permit is like a driver's license. You get it once, and it should travel with you. You assume the same basic rules follow you across the map. But gun permits often don't work that way, and that's where the headaches stack up. Even inside one state, the rules can feel like a maze. Concealed carry can be treated differently than open carry. Carrying on your hip can be treated differently than carrying in your backpack. And carrying in your home is usually treated differently than carrying in public. Another common belief is that if I can buy it, I can carry it anywhere. But buying and carrying are separate legal questions. You can be allowed to own a firearm, yet still be restricted on where you can bring it. That gap surprises people, and it shouldn't. Now zoom out and look at the country like a patchwork quilt. Some states are friendly to carry, some are strict, many are in between, and each state has its own mix of permits, training rules, and banned locations. So the same person, doing the same thing, can be legal on one side of a bridge and illegal on the other. That's why people talk about rights and still get arrested. It's not always because they're bad people. Sometimes they're just running yesterday's assumptions in today's rules. And gun law is a place where outdated assumptions can land hard. A major shift happened when the Supreme Court changed the way courts review many gun rules. In plain language, the court said you can't treat public carry like a special favor. It shouldn't depend on whether an official thinks you need it enough. That idea got tied to a case called New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruen. Bruen wasn't a simple everything is allowed now moment. It didn't erase permits across the country. It didn't make every restriction vanish. What it did was change the pressure inside the system. It pushed many states away from "we'll decide if you deserve it" and toward clearer, objective standards. Before that shift, some places ran on a kind of permission culture. You could follow the steps and still get denied for reasons that felt personal. Maybe an official liked your reason, maybe they didn't. Bruen challenged that approach, and the Supreme Court decided 6-3, which tells you it was a big national argument. After that, the ground didn't settle right away. It started moving. Some states adjusted their permit process. Others rewrote rules in new ways. Instead of denying permits for not enough reason, they tightened other screws. More training, more fees, more paperwork, more places labeled off limits. This is where the two worlds idea gets real. In the first world, you hear you won the right to carry. In the second world, you find out the permit might be easier to get, but harder to use. Because the map of sensitive places can grow until your safe options shrink. A sensitive place is just a location where carrying is restricted. The classic examples are schools and courthouses. Most people expect those. But the modern fights are about how far that category can expand. Parks, transit, stadiums, medical buildings, entertainment districts, even whole zones of a city. And you don't need to love or hate any of that to see the problem. A person can be trying to follow the law and still lose track of it. One missed sign, one wrong assumption, one bad habit from a different state. Suddenly, it's not a rights debate, it's a charge on paper. So let's talk practical reality, the places people get tripped up. Not because they're reckless, but because life is messy. Travel plans change, people take detours, someone gets hungry and stops for dinner, and you can't always feel the legal border you just crossed. Cars are the #1 confusion machine in this whole topic. People assume their vehicle is like an extension of their home. Sometimes the law treats it that way, sometimes it does not. A firearm in a glove box, under a seat, in a trunk, or on your body can all be viewed differently. Now add stress to the mix, like a traffic stop. Even polite people get nervous when lights flash behind them at night. Your brain goes into be normal mode, and you start moving too fast. That's when safe behavior matters most. Slow movements, clear communication, and no sudden reaching. Different states also handle duty to inform differently. That means whether you must tell an officer you're armed, even if not asked. Some places require it, some don't, and the details can be very specific. The safest approach is to know your state's rule before you're in that moment. Public places bring a different set of traps. Restaurants that serve alcohol are handled one way in one state and another way elsewhere. Sporting events, concerts, and fairs often have their own security rules too. And even if state law allows carry, the property owner may still set rules for their building. Private property is a huge piece people ignore. You can be on land that isn't yours and still feel like it's public enough. A store, a mall, a parking lot, a workplace, a friend's apartment building. Owners can often set conditions for entry, and violating them can bring consequences. Workplaces are especially tricky because policy and law can overlap. A job might allow something that state law restricts, or the reverse. Some states protect certain employee rights in parking lots, others don't. And even when something is legal, it can still get you fired, which is its own kind of damage. Then there's the problem of signage. In some states, a posted sign has real legal power. In other states, a sign is more like a request until you refuse to leave. So the same "no firearms" sticker can be a serious legal line in one place and a different issue in another. Travel across state lines is where people can go from responsible to charged fast. Many states do not honor other states' carry permits. That's called reciprocity, and reciprocity is not a national rule. It's a patchwork of agreements and local choices. So a permit that feels solid at home might mean nothing 2 states away. Airports add another layer of risk, even for careful people. Sometimes it's a simple mistake, like forgetting what's in a bag. Sometimes it's confusion about where you can legally possess versus where you can carry. And airports are not a place where you want to learn by trial. Federal property is also worth a calm warning. State rules don't always control there. Post offices, some federal buildings, and certain areas around them can trigger federal rules. And federal trouble tends to be heavier, with less room for, "I didn't know." Now, none of this means don't own or don't carry. It means treat it like driving in winter. You can do it safely, but you need habits. You don't speed, you don't assume the road is the same as yesterday, and you don't wing it. Gun ownership deserves that same steady mindset. This is also where people misunderstand what Supreme Court rulings do. A ruling can change the legal test courts use, but it doesn't rewrite every state code overnight. It doesn't retrain every local office, and it doesn't instantly settle every lawsuit. There's a lag, and during that lag, regular people are the ones living in the uncertainty. After Bruen, lower courts and states started wrestling with a new style of argument. Instead of weighing public safety against the right in a broad way, courts often look to history. In plain terms, they ask, is this kind of rule similar to rules Americans accepted long ago? That sounds simple, but it turns into hard debates about what counts as a real match. Some people hear that and think it means anything old is allowed, anything new is banned. That's not how it plays out. Courts still allow many limits, especially on dangerous people in certain places. The fights are usually about how wide a restriction can spread and still make sense under the Constitution. And those fights are still happening right now, in different forms across the country. If you've made it this far, you're exactly the kind of person this channel is for. Not because everyone here agrees, but because people here try to be careful and informed. If you want more conversations that stay calm, practical, and respectful, consider subscribing and sticking around. It helps keep this space focused on real understanding instead of heat and noise. Now let's zoom in on a detail that matters more than most people realize. Gun laws don't just punish bad actions. They also punish bad timing and bad context. The same object, carried the same way, can be treated differently based on location and intent. That's why responsible owners think about context first, not ego. Picture a simple day. You leave home, stop for gas, grab coffee, and head to work. You're not thinking about the law every minute. You're thinking about your job and your kids. But the law is still there in the background, quietly waiting for the moment you cross a line you didn't notice. That's why planning matters, especially when routines change. One of the most common mistakes is mixing up possession and carry. Possession can mean the firearm is with you, even if it's not on your body. Carry usually means you're armed in a ready way, often on your person. Some states draw sharp lines between those ideas, and others blur them. Another mistake is assuming concealed is always safer legally. Concealed carry is often more regulated than open carry in some places, and the reverse in others. A covered holster, a jacket, a bag, even printing through clothing can become a legal issue in some states. So just keep it hidden is not a universal solution. Then there's the issue of friends and family. People will say, just toss it in the car, it's fine, or we're only going for a quick stop. Quick stops are exactly where people end up in the wrong place without meaning to. Even a simple neighbor dispute can turn into a legal storm if a firearm is present. Two people argue about a fence line, a dog, or a parking spot. Nobody plans for it to become a police call. But if it does, the presence of a gun can change how everyone interprets body language and tone. This is why responsible gun culture is mostly boring. It's paperwork, safe storage, training, and steady habits. It's not showing off, not escalating, and not trying to win a moment. It's the opposite of drama, because drama is where mistakes multiply. Now let's talk about the phrase keep and bear arms in real life. Even people who strongly support gun rights often accept some limits. Most agree felons can be restricted. Most accept bans in certain secure buildings. So the debate isn't usually rights or no rights. It's where are the boundaries? A helpful way to understand it is to compare it to free speech. You can speak, but you can't threaten, harass, or create panic in certain ways. The right is real, but it exists inside rules meant to keep society stable. Gun rights work similarly, even if the details are different. Where people get lost is thinking the boundary lines are common sense. Sometimes they are, like schools, but sometimes they aren't, like a random local rule about a city park or a transit station. So common sense is useful, but it's not enough by itself. That's also why you hear stories that feel unfair. One person does the same thing as another person, but only one gets charged. Maybe it's because the states are different. Maybe the county enforces differently. Maybe the officer's understanding is different, or the situation looks different from the outside. You can't control all of that, but you can control your approach. Calm behavior matters. Respect matters. Clear boundaries matter. If you're carrying lawfully, your goal isn't to prove a point. Your goal is to get home safe, with your rights intact and your life intact. So what should you remember without turning this into a rule book? First, your permit is not a passport. It may stop working at the state line. Second, allowed to own is not the same as allowed to carry here. Third, places matter, signs matter, and private property rules matter. Fourth, travel deserves extra attention because travel breaks routines. Routines are where safety habits live. When you travel, you're tired, you're distracted, and you're passing through unknown rules. That's why people who never have issues at home can still get in trouble on the road. Also, pay attention to the difference between state law and local rules where they apply. Some states limit what cities can do, some allow more local control. So two towns in the same state can still feel different in practice. Not because the Constitution changes, but because the ground rules around you do. If you ever feel unsure in the moment, the smart move is to slow down. Not slow down like freeze in fear, but slow down like don't add chaos. Don't argue on the roadside. Don't get loud to prove you're right. Handle it calmly and handle the details later through proper channels. And when it comes to learning, focus on official sources and trusted local guidance. State police websites, state statutes, and reliable training groups can help. If you need legal advice for your situation, that's what a qualified attorney is for. There's no shame in getting clarity before you act. I also want to say something that gets missed in a lot of online talk. Being pro-rights and being pro-safety are not enemies. A serious Second Amendment view includes serious responsibility because the stakes are real. The law is one part, but judgment is the part you carry everywhere. So let's land this plane with a clear, calm wrap-up. The Second Amendment protects a real individual right, and the Supreme Court has strengthened that idea in recent years. But the day-to-day rules still depend on states, places, and the situation you're in. If you treat the law like a simple slogan, you'll eventually run into a moment that doesn't care about slogans. What keeps people safe and lawful isn't having the hottest take. It's having steady habits and a clear head. Know whether your permit travels. Know your common restricted places, and when life changes the plan, don't assume the law changes with it. If you like content that leaves you better prepared instead of more angry, you'll probably enjoy what we do here. Subscribing isn't about hype on this channel. It's about building your own understanding over time. The more you watch, the more you'll be able to spot the traps before you step into them. And that's the whole point. Fewer surprises, fewer mistakes, and more calm control.